Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 263. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're excited to have with us the internationally acclaimed and Eisner award-winning author, illustrator, and graphic novelist, Ben Hatke.
Hello.
Ben,
nice to see you.
How's it going? Yeah.
Pretty good.
So we were just talking before we went live that you just recently had a book just come out a couple days ago as of this recording. And this was one of your COVID projects. It was called Reynard's Tale, correct?
Yeah, right. Yep.
First, do you want to before we jump in and start talking about Reynard's Tales, for those people that might not have, say, school-age children that might not be familiar with Ben Hatke, award-winning illustrator and writer, do you want to give people a little bit of background of
sure,
how you got into your work?
For the past 10 or 15 years, I've been mostly doing sort of middle grade graphic novels and picture books, two formats that I've loved very much. So I did the Zeta the Space Girl trilogy. That followed that with Mighty Jack, which also turned into a trilogy. Well, that was a sort of a modern retelling of Jack and the Beanstalk, which dovetailed into the Zeta universe and became its own sort of trilogy on its own. And then my picture book, and these things end up dropping from the trees in threes. But Julia's House for Lost Creatures was my first picture book, and ended up with two sequels as well. Then we were talking about Dungeons and Dragons. The book I get the most notes and feedback and letters from readers, etc. about is Nobody Likes a Goblin, which is a picture book about, let me grab it. Here we go. Picture book about a little goblin who runs off to some terrible adventurers come into the dungeon and steal away his best friend Skeleton. And so Goblin goes out into the wide world to save Skeleton. So yeah, picture books, comics. Really think of myself as sort of an all-around storyteller at this point, working in various mediums. And so just today I finished. Honestly, I'm working on just spelling and grammatical things. I finished the last lines of a 100,000-word young adult novel.
Wow.
Which is which I'm going to send off to my editor next, which is it's an official project. There was a previous draft of it, and I have just gone back and redrafted it. So now I think it's about there. So I'm hoping that'll be out next year.
And are you going to have your own illustrations on this as well?
And I think a map in the front, but other than that, no.
Okay.
It's going to stand on its words.
I first discovered you when my daughter brought back Mighty Jack.
Okay.
And I said, this guy looks familiar. And this was like a few years ago. She goes, yeah, because we read Zeta the Space Girl before.
Oh, okay.
This is the same guy. Okay. Yeah. And so I picked up and I read Mighty Jack. And I love the fact how you're able to combine, like the third Mighty Jack book combines with Zeta the Space Girl is in there. And was this epic. It was like this epic, Avengers Endgame situation where they combine
Marvel crossover.
Yeah, it was a big crossover event that happened on there. And so I'm very curious about that world building aspects of how you're doing this. And I know that you said in one of your Q&As is that you mentioned that you love as you say, the sweetness of what you do is like you love creature design, you love environment design.
For sure.
Talk to us a little bit about what are some of the world building aspects on that thing that you consider more workhorse, more the things that you more struggle on. Is it maybe like creating governments or politics or languages? What are some of the things that you work more towards that are harder for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of structural stuff to storytelling. I feel that there was a lot of especially in the book that I was just talking about that I just finished there. That is also has a strong fantasy element in it. And for me, it ended up being one of the difficulties was having them, and it sounds so, it should not be this problematic, but having the magic make sense sort of mechanically almost and this story deals a little bit with like fairy hearts, and they're divisible, so you can get like a portion of a fairy heart and and like that creature can keep the other portion of the heart, and whatnot and whatnot. And then like just that being able to happen just made a lot of I guess logistical problems in the story, that you have to be like explain, like, where is this half a heart, where is that half a heart, what happens if both of them are together, you know, like there was all this stuff. And there are times when you can paint things with a very broad brush, like where did these creatures come from, you know, and then there are times when you want to tighten up, more fleshed out backstory to it. But then the more you tell, the more those things are seen and sort of lodged in the reader's mind. And then if you cross that, then it's like, oh shoot, you've got to keep a lot of these things straight in your own mind. So there are logistical things like that I feel like get, even in simple stories, can be complicated. But then there's like there's other times when it's just a joy to just be like, nope, in this world robots are like this, and I don't have to explain why. You know, you could just take it as go. So like one of the projects that I really have good memories of working on is Little Robot was a joy from start to finish. And it's a simple, the world of it is fairly simple. It's our world, except some pretty sophisticated robots do exist. A little girl finds a box falls off a truck, floats down the river, and this very, very small girl finds this box, activates the robot, and then has to essentially like teach the robot how to walk, and also they become friends. And to me, I think when I look at the book, I think that the complexity of the book is the complexity of friendship, right? Like what brings friends together, what pulls at a friendship, you know, like all these little emotions feel like the complexity to me. But then the fact that how does the robot work, that it barely matters. The robot is essentially a creature, and we kind of get a glimpse of the factory where it's from, and it could lead you, like it would lead some curious readers to questions about that world. But on the other hand, leaving that fuzzy gives you this sense of mystery. It's almost like Star Wars universe comes to collapsing under its own weight of how much it's told, right? Under its own complexity, I guess.
So like you're talking about before with like the magic, and that is that in Reynard's, is that in the Reynard's tale?
No, I was thinking more of the novel that I turned in just now.
That one. Okay.
That deals a lot with like no, Reynard is almost storytelling poetry in a way, I feel like, and that sounds that might be sounding too fancy, but it's very much more concerned with like emotions rather than like how things work. Well, it's very much like it felt in a way like pure storytelling, in a way that or what I had hoped storytelling would feel like in sort of like the earlier storytelling traditions. Like there's like the other thing I was talking about at an event the other night is we have like, there's a long history of animal stories and animal stories, using animal stories to tell us about ourselves. And like we think about Wind in the Willows, right? Like at one point, like it says something about, oh, Toad combing his hair. Oh, that's like, we don't really think about that. And then there's like Rat, the water rat lives in a hole by the river, but like Toad lives in this big house and gets a car and drives it around. And you're like, well, what parts are they animals and what parts are they people? And you're just like, that part of your brain isn't as uncomfortable shutting off. I think we're getting less comfortable shutting that part of our brain off than we used to be. Because when you go back to like the Norse myths, you think like, how big are the frost giants? How big are they? There are stories where they're all sitting, where the like Thor and those guys are sitting at the table with the frost giants. There are other stories where Thor gets lost in this cave with the 5 tunnels going off it, and then you realize, oh, he's in the glove of a giant. And you're like, but wait, they could also sit down. But you don't ask those questions. It's like, whatever the story you're telling needs gets that. And this felt a little, doing the Reynard story felt a little closer to that. What the king that is trying to get Reynard to come in is king of. He's just the king.
Right.
So I don't know.
And no, so For that question, so what were some of your inspiration? As you say, this was kind of like a COVID project for you, doing Reynard's Tale. How did this kind of coalesce? How did it get together?
Wow. So Reynard as a character, gosh, I think I drew Reynard in 2014 when I was doing like a little sort of an Inktobery type thing where I was going to do a little series of magic users. I had sort of a vague idea of a world where magic is a little bit more of a sword and sorcery world, where magic sort of is felt to be low and kind of a not very respectable profession. You shouldn't do it. It's kind of dirty.
Right.
And then when you use magic, you yourself start to change a little bit. And it will change different people in different ways. So I drew all these weird wizards. Like one of them was like Emirate the Handsome, and every time he casts, like everybody loves him, but every time he casts a spell, he gets a little bit smaller. And so here he is sitting on the edge of a boot. He's finally gotten that small. There's one guy who'd used magic so much that he was just a floating barrel full of goo, dripping goo. There were a bunch of these different ones. One was just like a cloak with a huge eyeball coming out of it. And two of the characters from that, one was the Clockwork Conjurer, who shows up in this book. And then the other one is Reynard, and he was sort of like that, like in that original bit of illustrations, the original version of him was like, he was sort of this magic using hunter kind of guy, and it turned him more fox-like as he used magic. And then after that, he just sort of lurked around in my sketchbooks for a long time and became more closely bound with the historical medieval Reynard stories. When COVID first came up, we had a family who were good friends of ours, and he sold. He was a wine seller to different restaurants, and of course the restaurants are all closed. A bunch of friends sort of organized a wine pickup to kind of keep that end of his business afloat. And I had agreed. I was like, okay, all the first 10 people to pick up to do the wine pickup will get a piece of art. I don't know I had no plan of what I was going to do.
Right.
They all ended up being pictures of Reynard and this minstrel just doing different things. But there was always a bottle of wine in the picture. There was always a little bit of music in the picture. There was always like or an open book or something like this. But no story, just this. And then the amount of time that Reynard started popping up in my sketchbook sort of kicked up. And then another good friend was talking about doing an Inktober kind of project. And she started talking about like, well, what are you going to, I wasn't really planning on doing anything, but it stuck in my mind. And then I just started telling the story. It's one of the first times that with that, with less planning than I think, it was a little bit more conversational, like me conversing with storytelling than it has been in the past with other books. And which was maybe another reason why I'm quite taken with this.
So this was almost like it was a passion project for you then, that you're able to get published.
Oh, very much. Yeah, very much. I wasn't even thinking I was making a book at the time. So I was thinking I was just doing a project. Even though I wasn't thinking of making a book, it still, one of the inspirations was Edward Gorey's book, The Unstrung Harp. It's a very Edward Gorey book. It's odd and interesting and it very meandering, and it's just about a writer who's a bit of a recluse who's trying to write a book, but structurally it was similar. It was like The Unstrung Harp is like 32 pages, 32 illustrations and 32 blocks of text, which I just thought was just like, I just really like that format. Like, I mean, it's very simple, but it's like line art, illustration, bit of text, go. So I'd like to see more books like it. Even, not saying that I'm going to do them. I like the format. I would like to see a more slightly older audience book in that format. The idea of trying to make the books that you want to read.
What part of that creativity hits you first? Do you draw a picture and then figure out a story behind it, or do you write something out and then see the image after you write it out?
Yeah, I used to be like, well, I used to think like, oh, these two things are like equal, right? And now these days I do feel like I'm very primarily visually oriented. And I feel like I used to feel like either that was giving words short shrift or I don't know. But I was reading about how C.S. Lewis was talking about the creation of the Narnia books and how it all spun out from an image in his head of a snowy landscape with a lamppost in it and a fawn. And that image just kind of, and a fawn specifically with a package of, and that is still, I think that continues to be like the most striking image in probably all the Narnia books is Mr. Tumnus walking with his umbrella and his parcels under in the snow under the lamppost. And you can see how that image just sort of like stuck with him and spun out into a book. And I feel like for the most part that's how it is for me. Things tend to start visually,
right,
and build from there. But that being said, I feel like I'm almost too structural in my storytelling. Then I'm too much of a planner once I get going.
Right. It depends on the genre of the audience you're thinking about, that you have to actually put some backstory and explain things. Because you mentioned about the robot stories, like, you know what? I don't need to explain this. The older the audience, you feel like you have to do more substantial world building with that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it depends on the needs of the story also. Every story seems to have its own vibe and its own set of needs and its own set of like you're like, and still is the part that I like about it is when you feel like it's really good. It's really at its best when you feel like you are wrestling with an unknown thing that is also talking back at you. And they you can plan a story out, but I like to hold on to that sort of weird mystical element where you are working with the unknown thing, and it becomes, you have the idea for the story, but it never ends up being what you thought. And you kind of have to be okay with that, right?
Right. Because I mentioned you do thumbnails, but do you script it out and then thumbnail, or do you thumbnail then script it out?
Yeah, so my method is to kind of get the story in very broad strokes.
Okay.
And that'll happen in both a sketchbook and in a notebook.
Right.
Just kind of like this happens, right? Oh, and at the middle point, then they find out it's this.
Right.
And then at the same time, I'm kind of drawing characters over and over again, drawing land, like for Mighty Jack, it would be the garden, just kind of living in the sketchbook, kind of keeping it really loose. Then I do plot it out rather. It's not a script, so I don't really do I'll outline the whole thing as if I'm telling you about a movie that I saw in detail, like everything that happened in the movie. Like, and then they did this, and it was this, but they thought it was going to be this, but it turned out to be that. And I'll just write that all out. And then I go to thumbnails, and that's when the sort of dialogue comes in and goes. And that feels very much like shooting a movie, right? That feels like you're going, because you're all in the thumbnails, then you're locking in camera angles. Oh, right now we're seeing them from above, and she's saying this and he's saying this, and I maybe know what the argument is, but the dialogue will come in there.
Okay. And then when you do that, so do you all right from the get-go, do you just do pencil on paper, or do you go straight to digital with anything?
Thumbnails that feels like the part where I'm writing the book. That feels the part where I'm making the book. And that those are on like printer paper, like, and it feels so messy and nice. Like I maybe have a pen in my hand, maybe I have a pencil in my hand. I don't know. It's very grungy. Now the current version of that process is to take a picture of each thumbnail with a phone, import all those in, make those a PDF.
Okay.
Completely illegible. But then I will go through it with my editor, and we'll get on the phone for like an hour, and then an hour the next day, and I will just tell her the story and explain to her what each of these drawings is. Because if you're looking at the drawing and somebody's telling you what it is, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. It's like, see, it's a person. Oh, okay. So it's almost like story time, and then I get like that feedback, tweak the thumbnails, and then but then the thumbnails end up being a map to the final art. They're finished enough that I can look at them and be like, then I put down a new page, then I get my ruler out and I ink the new page, and then scan those, and then they're set for coloring.
So you do everything analog in that sense. You don't digitally draw any of that down.
I don't digitally draw very much. And then I digitally letter my books. I actually hand letter everything, but I do that with a stylus. But it is me writing all the letters. All the letters
really
are me writing letters. Yeah.
Wow.
And I actually like that's digital work I like. I like here's the balloon as like I write in the dialogue.
Wow. Okay.
So that's fine. It's a little I think it's a little annoying to publishers. Not bad enough that they tell me not to do it. So that's all right. This book here is Things in the. I don't know if we can see this very. These are loose proofs, but there is. There's the cover to Things in the Basement, and then the back cover is Rodin's Gates of Hell.
Oh right.
And then this is the inside. This would be underneath the dust jacket. Here's Milo crossing the cave in the underground lake. So this book was done in first book I did in like really soft dark pencil. So really instead of properly inking this book, it's all pencil tones. It's all rough, like ebony pencil, to give it, because it's an underground journey. It's like sort of an underworld story, so it gives it that the darks and lights. and then my friend Zach Giolongo colored the book, and he just sort of like, so he took my blacks and whites and he did the color work and just brought it to life. It was very exciting. That part was very exciting to me. Seeing what he did with the colors.
So one of my questions that I wrote after reading, your Mighty Jack, the third installment, and I said, listen, if I get Ben on the show, I have to ask him this question. Is there a shared like Hatke universe? Like, do all of your stories interconnect? Like, is it conceivably speaking? I mean, is there like Julia's House of Lost Creatures? Is that in the same world as Zeta and Jack? Is the goblin, is that part of the goblins that probably are spread out because you've created these different dimensions in a way that you've already established? Is this one whole shared universe?
Okay, so then the super nerdy answer is I do think about that. I'm almost embarrassed that yes, I do think about this. The graphic novels all exist together in one sort of shared universe. So that's the Mighty Jack books, the Zeta books, and Little Robot all do exist. And the girl from Little Robot is briefly seen in Mighty Jack. She's at the flea market walking along, and so she exists in that world. And then the picture books, the Julia's House books, and Nobody Likes a Goblin, they also they exist in their own world. And the troll, and their world is a little bit more flowy, because I feel like Goblin's story and Julia's story are very set apart in time, but it's the picture book world feels a little bit more like the Muppets, where there's all these characters and they're just telling stories with like oh, in the Great Muppet Caper, they're reporters. Now the other ones, they're just Muppets. And now it's Muppet Christmas Carol, but it's still Gonzo. It feels a little bit more like that. So like the troll in Nobody Likes a Goblin is definitely the same troll in Julia's house. Like there he is. He's exactly the same. So
it's like a different character but the same actor almost. Like it's like the Muppet.
Yeah. That's how it feels. That's how it feels.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And then then with the most recent graphic novel, like the Milo story, that one feels like it's in yet another sort of non crossing over world. So
have you ever thought about taking, like, for instance, like specifically the Mighty Jack and Zeta universe, making that into a role-playing game module at all, letting people play in the world that you've created?
I mean, that would be a blast. That seems like the kind of work that I'm not good at. I don't think that would be my job. I think if a gaming company wanted to do that, I'd be like, let's do it. I will super duper consult on that project. But in terms of like putting a project like that together, man, I don't know. Because I'm not good at I think like we were talking about magic systems. I feel like game mechanics would be a little bit the same for me, where I'd be like, a little harder for me. And role playing, I'm very much I'll pick a character that I can role play real well.
Right.
And so I in D&D I tend to avoid magic users because it's a lot of rules, and I'd rather I'm more like interested in but how does the character feel? So
what do you mostly play, like bards and thieves? Is that what you seem like? Is that
yeah. I go to that, or even just a basic rogue but has an interesting story. Even more recently, I've just been doing fighters. I had a monk character for the longest time, Brother Hambone, and he was great. That was a fun one, and I only had to keep track of a certain number of feats and things, so it was a little easier.
Right. I mean, because you mentioned in a previous interview that one of your major inspirations, and you said it earlier, is Jim Henson in a way, and that's how you love the creature design and the environment design of just really just letting your imagination go wild. With the advent of saying with 3D printing, has there been any pieces of you wanting to take at least some the robots you've made in creating 3D designs for those? Or
I've thought about making little models just for drawing.
Okay.
To put a light on the character and being like, okay, let's stay on model. I've never really had to do that, but I do. In one of the most exciting things that happened with a friend was when I was working on Mighty Jack and the Goblin King. There is a car chase with the giants through the castle at the end. I'm sorry, that's a spoiler, but Lily finds an old Shelby Mustang. And I was like, oh shoot, I don't like drawing cars. And then a friend of mine found a rotatable model. This was years ago. He found a 3D model I could rotate, and I was like, yes, this changes everything. I could just rotate it here, digitally, and I'd always had that car at the exact angle that I needed, and that was fantastic. But then as far as models of characters go, let me see if I can grab this real quick. What's been one of the most lovely things that has happened through the years, people have sent me models of characters that they've made.
Oh yeah, robot.
A good friend of mine who actually, he's an amazing guy. He runs he runs a circus show in Las Vegas, and he's sort of the MC or the ringmaster of this show. He's very Piper-esque. But his family loves the Zeta books, and he made a one, and one
it doesn't
opens up.
Oh,
and it's
that's
got a magnet,
awesome.
And it's got all of the stuff. You can magnet his various devices onto it, so you can have this little laser cutter there, all these things. So he's got that, and then he made a Strong as well.
Oh wow,
really awesome. And then earlier this year, another person who follows the books, out of the blue, sent one of the little onion head guys from Mighty Jack as well. But these things have shown up through the years, and it's just been wonderful. I almost want to leave that to other people to do, to engage with it, to engage with the stories, and receiving that kind of thing. I have a PO box now. That's just been a treat as well. Because you just kind of never know what's going to show up. So just put the PO box up on the website, get a lot of really nice letters from kids, and then every once in a while it's a prize.
And so, like you said, you have that you said that Things in the Basement is coming out this year, correct?
Yeah, that's coming out at the end of August. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And as of this recording, mentioned that as of this recording last week, you just had that Reynard's Tale came out. Is this going to be a trilogy? Are you going to accidentally make a trilogy book with Reynard, do you think?
No, I don't believe so. Every once in a while, I think a book is just its own little thing. It'll be its own those things, but I say that now. Who knows?
So Ben, if people want to learn more about your work, where's the best place they could go to?
Right now, my online presence is mostly I have a blog online that I just quietly blog on. That's benhatke.com. Those are just thoughts. I post a lot on Instagram. That's where like some of my new stuff. I don't actually have a front page, but a lot of my most interesting stuff is up on Patreon now.
Okay,
and
good.
I keep a lot of those posts open for everyone, so you don't.
Okay.
You can see a lot of stuff without actually signing up, and it's just there's just a single like $3 tier, but the Patreon is where I put experimental projects, all the various other things I'm doing, and examinations into various, I don't know, aero projects and things like that. So.
And you just now, did I read correctly that you're actually making a Hawkeye comic as well?
Yes. There's an anthology coming out. I don't offhand remember the date. That story is done. Marvel was doing a young readers anthology with a story, all these different characters, and every artist or every creator does one character, and then they're all gathered together in this anthology. And each story is like 6 pages. So you want to get to the heart. The goal is to get to the heart of the character in 6 pages with a real simple story. One of the things I love is archery. So I got the invitation to this, it came through my agent, and I actually told her, I was like, I want to do Hawkeye or nothing. I'm not interested. And I was like, I was only half joking. Like, I couldn't really think of another character that would have been open that I would really have jumped on. And it's also funny because I don't think nobody else was really like competing for Hawkeye, and you can totally do the Hawkeye story. Okay. So that was actually really fun. That was a really good experience. And also it was just like nice to dip your toe in. 6-page story, no problem. Both Hawkeyes, Kate Bishop and Clint Barton. So
that's amazing. And was it fun to kind of like, draw him in your style as well?
Yeah, it was totally fun. Yeah. And doing the sketches was a blast. Like, just kind of like, because you don't know ahead of time. Like, I mean, I haven't really drawn very many pictures of him before, so so filling sketchbook pages with that was cool.
Did you invent any like Ben Hatke-esque arrows or anything that had any special powers?
Did I? Yes, I invented a couple arrows. One was the blindfold arrow, so that hits into the wall, and then these little ribbons shoot out, and if you shoot it right at eye level, all these ribbons will shoot out over everybody's heads, and they bump into each other and fall down. And then, oh gosh, I think that was the only really good one I did. I mean, I did one that opens up a hole, like a molecular displacement arrow, that like a PIM particle arrow that opens up a hole in the floor, but that doesn't seem that amazing. But the blindfold arrow I was proud of.
That's a really fun one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And it'll probably have that wispy like lines to it that you're really good at too.
Yeah. The curvy, wiggly lines.
Yeah.
And my editor once said, "Oh, Ben Hatke, you draw the best wiggles." Because I do like to do those undulating lines.
Right. So. You know what you need to do now? You actually have to get like a coffee cup made that says "I draw the best wiggles." And you need to,
that's a good one. Yeah. Maybe that'll show up in my P.O. box. Who knows?
There you go. Well, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Ben. This has been a genuine pleasure chatting with you. And you're welcome anytime. Anytime you have a new book coming out, come on over. It's been great chatting with you.
Let me know. Yeah, that'd be great. On my other side here is a friend of mine gave me a piece of wallpaper, blank mottled wallpaper years ago, and I kept this rolled up in a tube, and eventually made Thorin's map. So that's Thorin's map from The Hobbit, and I made this before. I think. Let's see. She gave me that in 2000. I don't know. I want to say it was before the movies. And then when I saw the movies, there's I think it's in Lord. I think it's in the Fellowship of the Ring where it kind of pans across the desk and you see Thorin's map, but it's clearly been folded in fourths. So it's got those creases in it, and I kind of want to open this back up someday and just fold it, put those creases in, make it a little bit more gnarled up, I guess.